admiration I actually have for China. Because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say, we need to go green as fast as we need to start investing in solar. I mean, there is a flexibility that I know Stephen Harper must dream about, of having a dictatorship that he could do everything he wanted, that I find quite interesting.
Okay, so to start off, I want to clarify something from the last video, and I know, I'll try to keep it quick so we can get to the main topic. So typically, I receive a few thoughts after a video like that. One, that I'm going too soft and should dive headfirst into the truth, which I feel like I do. I'm just picking my words as carefully as possible. And look, I know you guys know a lot. You are fully aware as to the extent of the political corruption. And while it is true that I sometimes tiptoe around something simply because, I don't know how to put it, out of the two options I have, either go full on and alienate someone who thinks this is stupid, the old, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. Or I could try to explain that this is not far-fetched. And I know, that's not the crowd I should be vying for, because all of you fully understand what's going on. And hell, I learn a lot from you, but it's so annoying. They have done such a good job at manipulating people into dismissing anything that's labeled as a conspiracy theory, when we are showing clips of them speaking, reading their own words. For example, when we reviewed Klaus Schwab's book, they openly talk about this shit. It just bothers me that it's considered outlandish when we have proof. We have clips of them saying this stuff. I guess I'm just trying to find that balance. I'll get there, just stay with me. But for example, the clips of world leaders talking about a new world order. When you bring that down to its bare bones, it's not crazy. The new world order that they are referring to is simply globalization, the public-private partnerships with government, and the new model for corporate governance. The clips of George H.W. Bush saying it. I mean, he even says in that clip that it's about allowing the UN to function as intended as the centralized entity for global governance, where all nations can come together for collective action. This is exactly what the Great Reset plans to implement. Now, each president since George H.W. have propagated this global idea and pushed their agenda forward. Now, it has been going on much longer than that though, don't mistake my meaning. But I guess we only have a few options as to how we disseminate information and try to claw back power from these tyrants. The fact is, when you examine the global power structure, how the fiat system works, how the central banks control the world via the flow of money, well, these are not conspiracy theories. I think it's important, it's really, really important, to expose how these weaponized labels distract from the true problems. When you look at how things really work, you quickly find that a select few dictate how our system runs. Not only that, the fact that these days, wealthy individuals leveraging their wealth to exert influence is considered a conspiracy theory. Well, that's insane. This is exactly how the world works, with pockets full of cash and lies on their lips. Sometimes I just don't know what planet people live on.
Well, look, here's the thing. There's about 150 people that run the world. Anybody who wants to go into politics, they're all fucking puppets. Okay? There are 150, and they're all men, that run the world. Period. Full stop. They control most of the important assets. They control the money flows. And these are not the tech entrepreneurs. Now, they are going to get rolled over the next 5 to 10 years by the people that are really underneath pulling the strings. And when you get behind the curtain and see how that world works, what you realize is it is unfairly set up for them and their progeny.
So as we went over in the last video, in this section talking about the structure of stakeholder capitalism, the same people who run our current system will run the new system. The Bank of International Settlements, the central banks, well, they're at the top of their pyramid. They are consolidating power and setting their corrupt system in stone. And it's all under the guise of collectivism or civil society. I mean, they are playing people, and that pisses me off. The same thing with identity politics. It's truly, truly annoying. They are simply pinning citizen against citizen.
In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable build-ups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind.
I mean, you know how corrupt everything is? Things are getting really, really crazy. Justin Trudeau, the same guy who said he admired China for their dictatorial ability. Well, he froze the bank accounts of protesters and seized their money, illegally, both corporate and personal accounts. This is why the push for central bank digital currencies is a massive fight that we have to take on. So that clip at the end of last week's video is still, yes, it is still bothering me. He says, and I quote, "Today we can't tell who is using a $100 bill or a 1,000 peso bill, but with CBDCs we can track and trace every transaction on Earth." However, he also reveals that they will have the ability to determine how the currency is used, which means that they will be able to do exactly what the tyrannical Canadian government is doing. Make a purchase they don't like, frozen account. Say something they don't like, frozen account. To say that this is dangerous is an understatement. If they get away with this, it sets a precedent. You piss off the government, well, your bank account has been relegated to zero. Good luck with starvation, I guess. And they have been doing this already. They have debanked political opponents. Mike Lindell was debanked. People are banned and their families are banned from using services like Uber or Airbnb. We are not in a good place. Every single person should be seeing a problem with this. I mean, come on, you disagree politically, so you ostracize them from society, take away services, cancel their bank accounts? No one should be okay with this. But it's worse. Idiots on social media are cheering for people to be fired from their jobs for donating to the Give, Send, Go campaign. Journalists are going through the data and contacting people that donated, sometimes as small as $40, and they are trying to get them fired for things like that. And they call you a Nazi. There's more to this though, but we're gonna move right along. I want to quickly talk about this. So, Klaus Schwab admitted that the vaccine passport system is the same thing as a digital ID, and I quote, "The COVID-19 pandemic has led to a heightened focus on the power of medical data, specifically so-called vaccine passports. These passports, by nature, serve as a form of digital identity." So, we were right, I guess. We have been right the entire time. This is not about health. When you look at the data, a reasonable person will conclude that there is no legit reason as to why we need every single person on Earth to take this. Unless it's not about that. It's about getting everyone linked to a digital ID and tied into the new economic vision. I mean, that makes a lot more sense. Or the other reason that I like to harp on, greed. Well, as it turns out, Project Veritas recently released a new video, an undercover video of an FDA official saying exactly what I have said many, many times. It's about turning the population into perpetual walking ATMs.
Biden wants to inoculate as many people as possible. So you have to get an annual shot. I mean, it hasn't been formally announced yet. So you don't want to rile everyone up. The drug companies, the food companies, the vaccine companies, they pay us hundreds of millions of dollars a year to hire and keep the reviewers to approve their products. If they can get every person required at an annual vaccine, that is a recurring return of money going into their company.
Ultimately, I think it's decentralization versus centralization. This is the fight, and it needs to be throughout all segments of society. We do not want centralized power structures or centralized currency with the ability to just be shut off by political opponents. The one thing that these madmen have right is that we need a new system, a system to reflect what we value, not the power-mad pursuits of the tyrants. The issue is that they are creating a system that is based upon corrupt principles, rather than a well-intentioned attempt at creating a free and just system for the future. It's all based upon lies. And I don't know how individuals on the left look around at the political landscape and think, you know, we should centralize power and give the political establishment complete control over our lives. You want to give these people that much power? Are you insane? Look at the politicians, and not just the left, the right too. You want to give Adam Schiff, the Bidens, Mitch McConnell, Pelosi, pick one, anyone. This is who you are going to trust. How can you trust them? It's delusional. It's madness. Alright, so anyway, today's video is basically just about government corruption and unethical behavior. We have a lot of options. We can take many different paths with this video. We could talk about how the CDC admitted, and I quote, "Remember that COVID-19 nose swab test you took? What happened to the swab? Well, if it was processed with a PCR test, there's a 10% chance that it ended up in a lab for genomic sequencing analysis. Learn more about the process and its importance." This is just really, really great. You know, without your consent, we sent your swabs to a lab for genomic sequencing. There's a 10% chance that genetic sequencing will be used to develop DNA databases and research into bioweapons, or slip to the CCP via backdoor agreements. We talked about this in the video regarding how DNA will be used to surveil the world. I think it's a pretty good video. And if you haven't, I would check that out. That subject is insane. But I guess it's all coming out in the open now. Or we could talk about the new bombshell report on Hillary Clinton manufacturing the Russia-Trump hoax, and how they use intel agencies such as the FBI and CIA to spy on a sitting US president. In that vein, in regards to the Clintons, I mean, we have talked about Bill and Epstein, but I'm going to have future videos on that topic coming out soon. We have talked a little bit about Bill Clinton selling China our weapons tech. We have talked about the Iran-Contra and Mena, Arkansas scandal. Another, I think that's a pretty good video too. We could talk about the Clinton Foundation pay-to-play schemes, Uranium One, Libya, or the DNC email leaks and the insane details within. And I am sure I'm missing a few scandals. One scandal that is really showing the hypocritical double standard is the fact that Hillary Clinton came out with some propaganda swag regarding her email scandal. Come on guys, buy some hats celebrating my corruption. You know, when we use bleach bit and hammers to smash phones in an attempt to get rid of evidence. I mean, come on, it's no big deal, right?
Okay, let's go through the facts. 17,500 emails that she lied about turning over. The server wipe. Within weeks of there being a report that she had a private server, it was wiped. She thought that C, which stands for classified, stood for cookie or something, which stands for classified. She thought that drone strikes are not classified. She said that the reason she used the private server is for convenience, and that she only had one device. She used 13 Blackberries, let me finish, and 5 iPads. At least she doesn't just stick to either BlackBerry or iPad. This is somebody who is absolutely disqualified from becoming president. They destroyed Blackberries with hammers in the State Department. That's not what one the president said.
Actually,
and by the way,
Evan, hold on. Can you fact check that? Hang on, Evan Perez. Hammers, fact check that for me, please, on the fly.
Yes, they did, Brooke.
Thanks,
As you mentioned, there were 13 devices, mobile devices, and 5 iPads that the FBI said that, you know, in some way were used with her private email server, and they did, in some cases, just destroy them with hammers when they were done using them.
Or we could talk about the Biden's ties to China, Hunter's business deals, the Ukraine fiasco, or how he gave his brother construction contracts in the Middle East. There's a lot of things I'm leaving out in regards to him too. We could talk about Mitch McConnell and his ties to the CCP banking system, his family ties to the Chinese government. We could talk about Pelosi's insider trading, how she is backpedaling away from her promise to ban stock trading for politicians, just because someone mentioned that it should extend to their family too. Their family members should not be able to just purchase shares on their behalf. Or we could talk about how she uses her family as a buffer for her political corruption. We could talk about her son's corrupt behavior in California, the bribes, and other various financial crimes. Or we could talk about Obama. Now this one is pretty funny. I came across this guy, a writer, who claims, and I quote, "Never lied, never cheated, never stole, never investigated, never impeached, never lost, never incited a deadly insurrection, not one blemish." I mean, could you be any more wrong? Is it possible to be more wrong than that? In regards to Obama, we could talk about the wars in Libya, Syria, Yemen, arming Al-Qaeda in Syria and Yemen, the drone assassinations including US citizens and families, his refusal to end the Afghanistan war, the coups in Honduras, Paraguay, Ukraine, and Brazil, or the hypocrisy of Obama deporting more people than any president, including Trump. I'm sure many on the left do not know that. We could talk about his crippling sanctions aimed specifically at a civilian population in Iran. We could talk about Benghazi. We could talk about the scandal with the IRS. We could talk about the AP phone record scandal, where he was using the intel agencies to spy on journalists. And that's not even including the scandals of Russiagate. where he was in the room when they decided to set Trump up. It's in the handwritten notes. And trust me, I know, I'm missing a lot more with him too. And you know, on that note, people should have realized something was way off. I mean, Trump came into office. It seems like the foreign war stopped for the first time in over 40 years. The Abrams Accord and the Middle East peace deals were extraordinary, and you would think that the anti-war group would give him a little bit of credit, just a little bit, but instead they dismiss it. I mean, the only time Trump was praised by the establishment and the media was when he launched missiles into Syria. But then, as soon as Biden took office, the wars began again. The establishment warhawks are back in power, and I guess that's what they meant when they said America is back. But the one scandal I want to focus on is one that's rarely talked about. So rarely talked about that I didn't really know much about it. I knew about it, but details were few and far between. So, let's talk about the anti-gun rights party arming the Mexican drug cartels. Let's talk about the Fast and Furious scandal. Operation Fast and Furious was designed to help the ATF dismantle drug cartels operating inside the United States and disrupt drug trafficking routes. Instead, it put into the hands of criminals south of the border some 2,000 weapons, which have been used to kill hundreds of Mexicans and at least one American, U.S. Border Patrol agent Brian Terry. The program came to light only after Terry's 2010 death at the hands of Mexican bandits, who shot him in the back with a government-issued semi-automatic weapon. Caught red-handed, the quote-unquote most transparent administration in history flat out lied about the program to Congress, denying it ever even existed. From there, Team Obama conspired to derail investigations into who was responsible by first withholding documents under subpoena, for which Holder earned a contempt of Congress citation, and later claiming executive privilege to keep evidence sealed. However, thanks to a court order, the Justice Department has coughed up sensitive documents. So far, it has produced 20,000 lightly redacted pages, although congressional investigators say they hardly cover all the internal department communications under subpoena. They maintain the administration continues to withhold thousands and thousands of documents. So during a raid on the little hidey hole of drug kingpin El Chapo Guzman, while they recovered not only the notorious drug lord, but a massive 50 caliber rifle capable of stopping a car or shooting down a helicopter. This rifle originated with the ATF program. Rest easy though, only 34 such rifles were sold during the program, or so they say. After the list of lies and corrupt actions I detailed earlier, do you trust them? 'Cause I don't. In November 2009, the ATF's Phoenix office launched an operation in which guns bought by drug cartel straw purchasers in the US were allowed to quote-unquote walk across the border into Mexico. ATF agents would then track the guns as they made their way through the ranks of the cartel. At least, that was in theory. In reality, once the guns walked across the border, they were gone. They disappeared. Whistleblowers reported, and investigators later confirmed, that the ATF had made no effort to trace the guns. They didn't make any effort at all. In March 2010, a few ATF agents voiced an obvious concern. Couldn't these guns end up being used in a crime? Well, 7 months later, that's exactly what happened. The brother of the former Attorney General for the state of Chihuahua was murdered, and Fast and Furious weapons were found at the scene. So, in December, the scheme's ramifications crossed back over the border. On December 14th, Border Patrol agents were stalked out near Rio Rico in Arizona, 11 miles north of the Mexican border. A 5-man rip crew, a group looking to rob drug smugglers crossing the border, and they opened fire when the agents attempted to catch them. Agent Terry was struck in the back and bled to death. 2 of the guns involved in the shootout were traced back to the Fast and Furious program, which continued for another 6 weeks. Now, Operation Fast and Furious would have been bad enough, but the investigation made clear that a widespread cover-up was beginning. So one of the guys that was involved with this was Eric Holder's deputy, Lonnie Brewer, an old Clinton hand, who had to step down in 2013 after falsely denying authorizing Fast and Furious. Their efforts to impede investigations included devising strategies to redact or otherwise withhold relevant information, manipulating media coverage to control fallout, and scapegoating the ATF for the scandal. For instance, in June 2011, an email discusses withholding ATF lab reports from Congress. And in one email from July 2011, well, it details senior justice officials agreeing to stay away from the representation that we fully cooperate. And then the next month, that's when they went into full damage control, with Associate Deputy Attorney General Matt Axelrod warning an ATF official that providing details about Fast and Furious, quote-unquote, strikes us as unwise. Now, I don't know, but that kind of seems like a veiled threat to me. From there, in late August 2011, another email reveals that Eric Holder had instructed his staff to have an official at ATF, quote-unquote, close the door to his office to prevent information from the mushrooming scandal from leaking. And then, this is really crazy. Talking points drafted for Eric Holder, but not just him, other brass for congressional hearings, while they made clear that the Justice Department intended to make ousted ATF officials the fall guys for the scandal. Yeah, they were going to set them up. Now by that time, Eric Holder had become a figure of particular interest. What did the Attorney General know about the operation, and when did he know it? Well, in May 2011, he claimed to have known about the gun-walking tactics for only a few weeks. But by October, new documents showed that Eric Holder had been briefed about Operation Fast and Furious as early as July 2010. And in January 2010, just months after the ATF had launched Operation Fast and Furious, personnel from the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, a multi-agency network run by the Department of Justice, had just been brought in to provide additional manpower. Furthermore, the operation may have had an explicitly political angle. Emails obtained by CBS News in late 2011 showed ATF officials corresponding about the possibility of using Fast and Furious to push through a regulation requiring gun shops to report the sale of multiple rifles or long guns. In other words, the ATF permitted certain gun shops to conduct certain inadvisable sales to dangerous people, and then planned to point to those sales to justify the need for new requirements on gun control. That is insane. Well, by the summer of 2012, Eric Holder and the House Oversight Committee were at a standoff, the Attorney General claiming he had been fully responsive to the committee's request for documents, while others were claiming that the DOJ had withheld over 1,300 key pages. And then Obama intervened, declared that the documents were protected under executive privilege. In late June, at the recommendation of the committee, Eric Holder became the first sitting member of a presidential cabinet to be held in contempt by the House of Representatives. In September, the administration declared victory. The Department of Justice released a report recommending disciplinary action against 14 federal officials, and they absolved Eric Holder. In fact, the report noted a series of extraordinary coincidences, in which, several times in 2010 and 2011, information about the program made it all the way to Eric Holder's desk, but without the Attorney General ever managing to pass his eyes on it. That is pretty odd. Since then, the investigation into Fast and Furious has pretty much been memory hold, But the ATF and the establishment's horrendous judgment continues to take a toll. Some 300 Mexicans have been killed or wounded by Fast and Furious firearms, and that number has surely risen. In December 2013, a gun from the Fast and Furious program was found at the site of a gunfight at a Mexican resort, one that left 5 cartel members dead. However, that's not the worst part. The guns have found their way north. A weapon owned by Nadir Sufi, one of the terrorists who tried to shoot up Pamela Geller's Draw Muhammad contest in Texas. Well, it was acquired through Fast and Furious. It is difficult to overstate how stupid and how incompetent these people are. I mean, who in their right mind thought it was a swell idea to traffic thousands of guns to Mexican cartels? And then just forget about it, not even try to trace and track them. I mean, that was their intended goal, right? And the laughable lie that this administration was the most transparent in history. I mean, the gall of these people, the audacity to think we're that stupid. And yet there's still people out there be like, no blemishes, he never did anything wrong. They are so stupid. It is difficult to overstate the contempt that the Obama administration has for transparency. In just this one example, they made these fatal mistakes, and in response, they came up with the idea to just hide it from congressional inquiry, going so far as to invoke executive privilege to do so. At best, the operation and its aftermath were an exercise in astonishing malpractice. At worst, the administration knowingly exhibited a reckless disregard for human life, and then covered it up. And if I had to choose, I'll go with the latter. The main takeaway, I guess, is that under Operation Fast and Furious, the US government became a de facto arms dealer to Mexican cartels and terrorists. But the people that were involved with that administration are currently in power again, right now. And just a look at the corruption, both past and present. They are the ones who want to lecture you about moral obligations. It is all truly mind-boggling. Once again, if you like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you want to, but just make sure you disobey those true fascistas. And do not, under any circumstances, trust them at face value. Until next time, I do hope you have a good night.